So today I'm going to do a deck tech for what I think is probably my favorite commander deck that I own. This is actually the second commander deck that I ever made, and this is Selvala Explorer Returned. This actually started out as a Trustani deck. It was like a green-white life gain deck, and I had Selvala in the deck, but then I realized that it was just more fun to play Selvala, so I swapped that out as the commander and then changed a few of the cards, and it's turned into this. So let's take a look at the card. It's a 3-mana Selesnya commander, 2/4 Elf Scout, and its ability, it has the Parlay ability, so you can tap, and then each player reveals the top card of their library, and for each non-land card revealed this way, you add a green to your mana pool, and you gain a life, and then each player draws a card. So, one way that I see a lot of people build this is Elf Tribal, seeing as this is an elf. And I've built this as basically a green-white good stuff deck, and I think it's a lot of fun to play because basically what you do with Selvala is you use this to get like a massive amount of ramp, and every turn you just tap this and parlay. You start your turn doing that every time basically, and you get a ton of card draw as well, and the life gain is also quite relevant. There are a pretty decent number of elves in the deck despite that though. So even though this card ramps us, we want to have quite a lot of the 1-mana mana dorks, because getting this on turn 1 will ramp us into a turn 2 Selvala, and then Selvala can start ramping with our parlay ability a turn earlier, which makes a big difference. So we've got Fyndhorn Elves, Elvish Mystic, Avacyn's Pilgrim, Llanowar Elves, and Birds of Paradise. These 5-mana dorks, just to increase the chance of getting them all, or one of them on turn 1. Got a Caustic Caterpillar in here. Caustic Caterpillar. It's just, it's artifact and enchantment destruction on a creature. This one is good though because it's not an enter the battlefield ability. There are some cards that cancel out enter the battlefield abilities, which would make this do nothing. And another thing with this deck, there's a lot of things that will let you tutor things out of your deck, or put things into play from the top of your deck. So if we need a way to destroy an artifact or enchantment, we can get this and use that to do it. Got some more ramp in here with Sakura-Tribe Elder. It's just, I feel like if you're playing green and commander, you're probably playing this card. It's a Priest of Titania. This is a little bit of elf synergy here. This can give us a lot of mana. Because, this is an elf, and Selvala is an elf, so that right there, that would tap for 2 mana for this, right? But then we've also got, Fyndhorn, Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, that's 3 more elves right there. So, it's not put together as an elf deck, but despite that, I think it's probably still worth including this, even if if it only taps for 2 mana, that's still good. Maybe it'll even get to 3 or 4. Got a Scavenging Ooze in here. It's just very flexible card, a good way to counter graveyard synergies. Once again, if we need to tutor up a way to counter graveyards, we can do that by getting our Scavenging Ooze. Omnath, Locus of Mana. Here's the first iteration of Omnath, I believe. This guy's cool. Green mana doesn't empty from our mana pool as Steps and Phases end, so it's just a 1/1 for 3, but it gets +1/+1 for each green mana in our mana pool. So with Selvala, conveniently enough, it adds green mana, and we can be getting a ton of mana with this deck, so Omnath can be quite useful, letting us save up that mana and also making it massive, I guess. It's an elemental. Shaman of Forgotten Ways. This card is really cool, I think. This is kind of an alternate win condition. It's a 2/3 for 3. Human Shaman. It has the ability you can tap to add 2 mana, but you have to spend it only to cast creatures. But then it has this Formidable ability. It costs 11 mana, which is a lot, but, since we're making a lot of mana, probably we can do it. And then you tap this. Each player's life total becomes the number of creatures he or she controls. Activate this ability only if creatures you control have total power 8 or greater. So, there could be a game where someone's gained infinite life or something like that, and if they only have 1 or 2 creatures, they can use this and their life becomes, 1 or 2. Or if they have 0 creatures, then they just die, right? you know, I like this as basically an alternate win condition, or a way to pretty much end games. Got another elf here, actually, Reclamation Sage. So this is similar to the Caustic Caterpillar in here for the same reason, except this is the enter the battlefield version of this effect. Eternal Witness, just a great green good stuff card, right? We can rebuy anything from the graveyard. Spike Feeder. So this is in here as part of a combo. Actually part of 2 combos, I think. Anyway, this can combo with either Archangel of Thune, or I believe also the new Heliod to give us infinite life and make our creatures have infinite power and toughness. I'll point that out when I get to those other cards, but that's the only reason this card is in this deck, is to combo with those. Walking Ballista, same reason. It combos with those cards, so this is another way to end the game. I'm not really a fan of infinite combos, but you know, you need a way to win the game, and this can do it for you. Or not even to win the game, you need a way for the game to end, right? Because, well, playing Commander is a lot of fun. You know, things can drag on if you've been playing for like 4 or 5 hours. Restoration Angel, it's just a great white good stuff card. When it enters the so it has flash and flying. When it enters the battlefield, you can basically flicker one of your creatures, you exile it, and then return it to the battlefield. It has to be a non-angel though. But there are quite a lot of good enter the battlefield effects in this deck, and this can just let us reuse one of them. And you know, it's also like I played this a lot in standard actually. With like I played a flicker deck with this and Thragtusk and Acidic Slime, and it was really cool. It was one of the favorite decks that I've ever made, I think. But even to give like a creature's pseudo vigilance with this, it's not nothing, right? Because you know, you could like it might seem like it doesn't matter, but you could, you know, attack with this, it's tapped, and then even just main phase this, play it, untap this. It's a very small interaction, but it could matter, right? That's not the reason that it's in here though, but you know, it's just something to keep in mind. Karametra's Acolyte, just another really big ramp card. Taps to add an amount of green equal to our devotion to green. So far, not a whole lot of devotion. This one's got 2, this one's got 2, but there are some other cards in here with more. But yeah, this is another card where I can just tap for a ton of mana. Captain Sisay. This is kind of like one of the ultimate green-white good stuff cards, right? You can just tap and search for any legendary card, put it into your hand. Pretty great. Got an Oracle of Mul Daya. A very popular green card for Commander. Let us ramp a little bit, play some lands from the top of our library. I got these messed up. Trying to keep them in order for converted mana cost. We'll see how that goes. Acidic Slime, one of my... actually, I think this probably is my favorite Magic card. So like I said, I played this in a standard deck. It was actually not that far off from when I started playing. It was, you know, pretty early into my Magic career, or whatever you want to call it. But I like this card a lot. It's so flexible. It's 5 mana, 2/2. It has Death Touch. But when it enters the battlefield, you can destroy an artifact, enchantment, or land. So, you know, it's always going to have a target, right? There are lots of artifacts and enchantments floating around in Commander, but the ability to destroy a land is super big on a creature like this. And, you know, it also has Death Touch, so it can trade with any creature that wants to block it or that it blocks. Got a Seedborn Muse here. This is another card that, you know, it's one of the green staples for Commander, but it fits great in a green-white good stuff deck, so I'm definitely playing it in here. Here's an Archangel of Thune, so this is the one that combos with Spike Feeder, and also... no, not with Walking Ballista. But, so, the way the combo works is that Archangel of Thune says, whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Spike Feeder says, remove a 1/1 counter from it, you gain 2 life. So, you know, you remove a counter from it, you gain 2 life, this puts a counter on it, and you just rinse and repeat until you have infinite life. And this has put, you know, infinite 1/1 counters on all your other creatures, including itself. Yeah, it includes itself. So that is that infinite combo. And then there's also an interaction with Heliod when I get to that guy. Got a Genesis Hydra. This card I think is really cool. You know, it's not it's kind of similar to a Genesis Wave, but it's worse because you only get one card. So what it does is, when you cast it, you reveal the top X cards of your library, and you can put a non-land permanent onto the battlefield with mana cost X or less, and then put the rest into your library. So it costs X green, enters the battlefield with X/1/1 counters on it. But usually with this, you want to be casting it for X equals at least 8, so you want to put at least 10 mana into it, because that means if you find your Craterhoof, you'll be able to put it into play, and you probably win the game. Sigarda. It's just another flexible card, right? Flying hexproof. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause you to sacrifice permanents. There's actually a decent amount of things that make people sacrifice stuff in Commander, like, there's a Dictate of Erebos, and what's the other one? Grave Pact, I think it's called. Effects like that. So this, it's a cool card that you can tutor up if you want, if your opponent's playing a strategy that uses those kind of effects. Sun Titan. Awesome white good stuff card. Lets us rebuy lots of stuff from our graveyard. Even if we don't have any good targets, like any creatures or anything, we could still just rebuy lands, right? Just use a fetch land and get it back with Sun Titan. Avenger of Zendikar. It's one of the top end cards, puts a whole bunch of tokens into play, and then they get bigger whenever we play lands. So this is kind of one of our finishers. It's something that we could tutor up to close out the game. Elesh Norn. It's another great white good stuff card. Makes all of our creatures bigger, all of our opponent's creatures smaller. It's great against token decks, right? It basically just makes all their creatures die immediately. But yeah, definitely playing this card. Angel of Serenity. This card is cool. It's another one that... so when I built this deck, it was not long after Return to Ravnica was in Standard, and I was playing cards like this, Acidic Slime, Restoration Angel. That was all in the same Standard format. So this deck is kind of like birthed itself from that Standard format, and Angel of Serenity is from that also. So when it enters the battlefield, you can exile up to 3 creatures from the battlefield or from graveyard. Then when this leaves the battlefield, return the exiled cards to their owner's hands. So kind of like the surface level thing to do with this is you play this and exile 3 of your opponent's creatures, until this leaves play. Notably, they go back to the hand, not back to the battlefield, so your opponent doesn't get them back right away when this dies. But one thing cool you can do with this is you can target creatures in graveyards. So you can target creatures in your graveyard so that when this dies, you basically get to rebuy those back out of their graveyard and put them back in your hand. Hornet Queen. Awesome green card. Makes a, so this is one that gives us a bunch of devotion, but, it's like an army in a can, right? Put 4 insects into play with Death Touch and flying. Terastodon. I think this is right on the top right. There's also... Oh, I got some more there. It destroys any non-creature permanent, right? So you can destroy some pesky lands and just give your opponent some kind of useless 3/3 green elephants. Like, it's not useless, but those are typically quite easy to deal with. Avacyn, make all of our stuff indestructible. And Craterhoof, which I talked about earlier. I've ordered the secret lair, the extra life one with the funny looking Craterhoof. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep using this one or if I'm going to use the funny looking one, but it's definitely something that I'm thinking about. But yeah, this ends games, so we're playing it. All right, Apex Altisaur. This is a rare, pretty new addition to the deck, actually. This is another one of my very favorite cards. It's 9 mana, so it's a lot. I think this is the most expensive mana cost in the deck for a creature. But it's just, like, I like this card so much. So it's a 10/10 for 9, but when it enters the battlefield, it fights up to one creature you don't control. But then it has Enrage, so whenever it's dealt damage, it fights up to another creature you don't control. So this is kind of like a one-sided board wipe that you can reuse. So, you play this, you fight something, it deals damage, you fight something else, and it has so much toughness that you can probably just clean your opponent's board up. And it's up to 1, so it doesn't have to keep going. You can stop when you want to. I just think this card is super cool. And it's also a dinosaur too, so that's always nice. That's it for the creatures. Got a little bit of artifact ramp in here, not a lot, because Selvala is a really good source of ramp just by itself. And we've got all these other little mandorks and stuff here too. So we got Soul Ring, and that's it. We got this Alhamaret's Archive. This is super good with this deck. So what it does is, if you would gain life, you gain twice that much life. And if you would draw a card, except for the first one you draw on each of your draw steps, you draw 2 cards instead. Well, Selvala does both of those things. So, you know, you parlay, say you reveal 2 non-land cards. Instead of gaining 2 life, you would gain 4 life. And so when you parlay, each player gets to draw a card, but you get to draw 2 cards instead. So this is pretty much perfect for this deck. Helm of the Host, it's just a commander staple, right? Can put that on any number of these creatures and have it be pretty awesome. Aetherflux Reservoir. I think this is pretty good in this deck actually, because, well, the main source of life gain is Selvala, but you gain more life off of this than you think you would, because it only says 1, right? But in a 4-player game, you could potentially be gaining up to 4 life per turn with that. So you'll probably have some life to spare that you could use for Aetherflux Reservoir. And, you know, this is another card that just kind of ends games, right? So I'm a pretty big fan of putting this card in this deck. Got some removal and Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares. Dromoka's Command, I see this as a removal. So it has 4 modes, all of them are relevant actually. You can prevent all damage an instant or sorcery spell would deal this turn, have a player sack an enchantment, put a 1/1 counter on a creature, or have a creature you control fight a creature you don't control. So you can choose 2 of those modes. Usually what you do is, well actually, so when this was in Standard, usually what you would do is put a counter on something and have something fight. But in Commander, I feel like probably more often than not, you'll have something fight and you'll have a player sack an enchantment. So being able to do both of those things on one card, I feel, is pretty powerful. I'm surprised this card doesn't see more play in Commander. I think it's really good for this format. In any kind of green-white creature deck. Beast Within, some more removal for anything. I'm gonna make some more room here. Let me just move these creatures out of the way. Eladamri's Call. So I mentioned a few times about tutoring things up. So the one that we've seen so far, actually 2 of them actually, there was Captain Sisay and Genesis Hydra. We've also got Eladamri's Call, so let us tutor up any creature, put it in our hand at instant speed. It's quite nice. Horde of Calling, another one, lets us tutor up is it a green creature or any creature? Any creature at instant speed and put it right onto the battlefield. Has Convoked, so it makes it a bit easier to cast. Well, actually a lot easier to cast. Got a Crozen Grip for some, you know, artifact and enchantment removal that cannot be responded to. Sylvan Reclamation. I like this quite a bit actually, as some more artifact and enchantment removal. Because for 5 mana at instant speed, you know, it's kind of a lot to pay for this effect, but you get to exile 2 artifacts or enchantments. Exiling is pretty big, so your opponent can't rebuy it back from their graveyard. Also has basic land cycling for 2. Like, it's definitely not nothing. Like, if you're really mana screwed, you could cycle this away and try to... Actually, yeah, you can cycle it away and get a land, so it is quite nice. But, you know, I would prefer to use it for its actual effect. A little bit of a sorcery ramp here in Nature's Lower and Farseek. Also, we got Cultivate. I have Cultivate and not Kodama's Reach. You know, it might not be the right choice to only be playing one. Probably I want to be playing both of them, but with Selvala and all those mana dorks and stuff, like, this deck usually ends up getting all of the mana it needs. So I don't want to kind of overload it on ramp, but, you know, there's 3 pieces of it here, all of which are quite good. Green Sun Zenith, another way to tutor up any green creature from our deck, put it onto the battlefield. If you're playing Dryad Arbor, you can get a land with this. I'm not playing that though, but, you know, it's an option that you could think about. Genesis Wave, another way to... It doesn't tutor stuff up, but it kind of does, because, you know, if you're making a massive amount of mana, like, with this deck, you can be paying X for, like, X equals 12 or 15 or something, and at that point, you're almost tutoring something up, right? Just put so many permanents into play. That's one of my favorite things to do with this deck, is just build up a board to a point where I can tap this and end up paying, like, ideally I'll get 4 mana off that, and then I'll be able to just put some massive number into this and just put a whole bunch of stuff into play. It's a lot of fun to do. Primal Command. This is another way to tutor up stuff out of our deck. So you can see there's quite a lot of creature tutors in this deck. You know, it has 4 modes. We can gain 7, we'll have target player gain 7 life, put a non-creature permanent on top of its owner's library, target player shuffles a graveyard into the library, or search your library for a creature, reveal it, and put it into your hand. All of these modes are pretty relevant, actually. Probably the least relevant one would be the gain 7 life, but you know, that's also not nothing. It's kind of a toss-up between 3. Usually, well, almost always one of the modes that I choose will be tutoring a creature, and then depending on the situation, I might want to have someone shuffle their graveyard into the library if they're playing a graveyard deck. Or if I want to just take care of a problematic permanent, I can put that on top of their library. Tooth and Nail, another tutor. You know, this is one where this basically ends the game if you can play it for its entwine cost. It's 9, but it's not that hard to get to that with this deck. But you just tutor up like Craterhoof and Avenger of Zendikar, and probably that's going to end the game right there, right? Or you can get like Avacyn and Sigarda. That's pretty good too. Or you could get, with this will let you tutor up your infinite life combo right there. Just get Archangel of Thune and Spike Feeder. You get infinite life. And you have infinite power and toughness on your creatures. Here's Austere Command, just a very flexible card for Commander, right? It's a Wrath. It also destroys artifacts and enchantments. Here's a new one, Vanquish the Horde. This is another Wrath. For a long time, I was playing Terminus in this deck, but that's another one where it was kind of a holdover from its standard days. But I finally swapped that out for a card that's better in Commander, I would say, in Vanquish the Horde. And this card's really good, right? It's kind of like a white Blasphemous Act. Sylvan Library. Super good source of card advantage, and also since we gain life, you know, quite reliably with Selvala, it's usually not an issue to just keep both the cards that we would draw, the extra cards that we draw off this, just pay life. It's fine, right? This one's cool. Illuminark Ascension. So what this does is 2 mana, enchantment. The beginning of each opponent's end step, if you didn't lose life, put a quest counter on this, and then you if this has 4 or more quest counters on it, you can pay 2 mana to make a 4/4 white angel creature with flying. So, you know, if you can play this on turn 2, then in almost 1 turn cycle, this will be active, right? Because probably you're not going to be taking damage that early. But also, since this deck makes a lot of mana, once this is online, you can just be pumping out 4/4 angels like it, you know, like it's nothing, right? So this is another one that can sort of end the game if it's online. It's a pretty big target when you play this. People want to take care of that enchantment. It's a Survival of the Fittest. You know, just a flexible card. It's another one that lets us tutor out creatures out of our deck, assuming we have creatures to discard. Can help us get one of our combo pieces. So here's the Heliod that I talked about earlier. So this one works with, so, you know, this is a modern deck. It's Counters Company, right? So we've got the, what's it called? The Walking Ballista in here somewhere. Yeah, there's the Walking Ballista. So that combos with Heliod. It, you know, you just win the game right away, right? Because Heliod, you can pay 2, give this lifelink, and then whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on a creature you control. So you just remove a counter, do a damage to something, gain a life, put another counter, and do that infinitely. And it does the same kind of thing with Archangel of Thune. So we got the Spike Feeder and the Archangel. So these 4 cards, those are our combo pieces. They all kind of do similar kind of things, right? And we've got many, many ways to tutor these up. So we got an Aura Shards here. It's just a great source of artifact and enchantment removal. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under our control, we can destroy an artifact or enchantment. So this is another pretty big target. Whenever you play this, people tend to want to get rid of that as soon as possible. Smothering Tithe, we're playing white, so we're playing this, right? This card is super good in this deck though, because it's similar to Alhammaret's Archive in that it's almost like it's made for this deck. But so, you know, whenever an opponent draws a card, they may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a treasure. So Selvala, you tap and parlay, and that forces each other player to draw a card, which means all 3 other players will have to either pay 2, and if they don't, you're gonna get a treasure. So if you have these 2 in play, chances are when you parlay, you're gonna get 3 treasures, which is super big, right? That ramps you for 3 plus whatever you got off Selvala. That's a massive ramp, right? This one's cool, Teleportation Circle. For a long time, I had a Conjurer's Closet in this deck, but I recently swapped it out for Teleportation Circle because this is kind of just a better version of Conjurer's Closet if you're playing white, because it costs 1 less, and also you can exile an artifact or a creature. I believe Closet's only creatures, but it just lets us flicker an artifact or creature at each of our end steps, and it's just in here to reuse enter the battlefield abilities every turn, right? There's lots of them that we can, like, ideally this would be good with Acidic Slime, destroy a land every turn, but even just like targeting an Eternal Witness, that's pretty great too, right? And a Defense of the Heart, yet another creature tutor. At the beginning of our upkeep, if an opponent controls 3 or more creatures, sack this, search your library for up to 2 creatures and put them onto the battlefield. So this is another one like Tooth and Nail, where if this goes off, then we can just get both of our combo pieces right away, or just get Craterhoof and something and win the game that way. Got a couple of mana doublers in here also. There's Mirari's Wake, so gives our creatures +1/+1, but also when we tap a land for mana, we get another of that mana also, so it doubles our mana that we get from lands. And then similarly, there's also Zendikar Resurgent. It does the same thing with mana, except it has a different ability. Instead of giving our creatures +1/+1, this is actually better, I think. Whenever we cast a creature spell, draw a card. Both of these are kind of commander staples, right? But, they work really well in this deck. Here's one that you don't see in so many decks, though. This is another one of my pet cards, Sandworm Convergence. 8 mana, so an expensive enchantment, but it is pretty powerful. I like this ability. Creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. That's a really big ability to have, right, in a 4-player game. Flying is one of the more popular abilities to have on creatures. This makes them not be able to attack you. But also, at the beginning of your end step, you make a 5/5 green worm creature token. So that's pretty nice, right? Get a worm at each of your end steps. I just like this card. I think it's pretty good. It might not be the most competitive card to put in here, but it's fun, so I'm playing it. Got some interesting lands here. Got an Ancient Tomb, some more ramp. Nykthos. We can search this up with Captain Sisay because it's a legendary land. You can search up any legendary card with Sisay. Wirewood Lodge in here for the little bit of elf synergy that we have, but actually this doesn't even need elf synergy. It just needs synergy with Selvala. Like, even if there were 0 other elves in this deck, this card would still be great in the deck because you just tap Selvala, parlay, use this, untap Selvala, parlay again. Seems pretty great. Blast Zone, just a removal for pretty much anything on a land. Gavany Township is another one that's left over from its standard days, but it's pretty decent effect, right? Just pay 4 mana, well, 4 mana plus this, tap, so 5 mana total, put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control. It's not a huge effect, but it's definitely relevant, so, I'm kind of a fan of putting this card in the deck. Ghost Quarter, some land removal on a land. Yavimaya, we're playing green, so we're playing this. Green and another color, so we're playing this. I feel like you would probably play this in pretty much any green commander deck that's not mono green, except for some really rare exclusions. Got a whole bunch of dual lands here. Fabled Passage, Command Tower, Wooded Bastion, Sungrass Prairie, Branchloft Hathaway, Sunpetal Grove, Windswept Heath, Wooded Foothills, off-color fetches, Flooded Strand, Brushland, Razor Ridge Thicket. Got a Savannah in here. This was I think this was the first reserved list card that I ever bought. I bought it to kind of power up this deck a bit. I'm pretty sure when I bought this, it was like, I want to say 67 Canadian dollars. So obviously I bought it a long time ago. But I'm glad that I did. Fortified Village, got the... so this is, I kind of pimped this deck out a little bit. Not every card is foil, but you say I have a lot of You know, a lot of them are foil. There's like Judge foil here, and then I also decided to get a couple of expeditions. Got the Temple Garden and Canopy Vista. Should have gotten the Windswept Heath also, but you know, maybe I'll do that. It's a little bit expensive now, so probably not. Scattered Groves, Bountiful Promenade, Overgrown Farmland, and then just a few basics. 3 plains and 6 forests. Obviously more forests than plains because we want to be able to play our mana dorks. Actually, you can see these are all full art foils from Battle for Zendikar. This is another way that I pimped out this deck, was when these were new, you know, full art lands were still pretty rare then, right? Because they hadn't been done that many times before BFZ, and then they started doing them pretty much every set. I bought all full art foil basics for this. I think I paid like $6 each for these, so it's kind of a waste of money at this point. Like, I was super overpaying at this point, but you know, whatever. It's still cool to have them, right? So that's the deck. It's a lot of fun to play. Like I said earlier, usually what you do is just every turn you go, you know, untap, upkeep, draw, parlay. You start every turn that way because you don't know what's on the top of your deck, so you're going to draw the card from the top of your deck, so that's, you know, that might change what you were going to do because you might draw something better than what you had in mind. And also, you want to know how much mana you'll have available, because this could potentially ramp you by up to 4 mana. And also, another thing with this deck is that it's a group hug deck. Like, it's sort of a group hug deck. That's one way you can build Selvala, is to make it really group hug. I don't really have it so much in this deck, but, you know, just Selvala's ability by itself is kind of a group hug ability. So for that reason, people tend to not want to target you because they also they like it when you parlay, right? Because they get to draw cards. But the thing is, they're drawing a card, but you're also drawing a card, and you're also ramping and getting life. So the advantage that you get from parlaying is way bigger than your opponent's drawing a card, right? But it's cool that you know, this people actually want your commander to stay in play because it helps them. So I've built this as just a good stuff deck. So that means that pretty much any green, white, or colorless card that's good probably could be at least decent in here. So there's tons of options to put in here. I'd be interested to hear if you know, if you've got any ideas for what might be cool to play in this, or if you play Selvala as a different way. There's a few different ways, like, right? You could play it like this, or Elf Tribal, or Group Hug, or probably something else that I can't think of right now. But it's definitely a cool card. One thing that's not in here is the other Selvala, the mono green Selvala. That would fit in here also. I was playing it for a bit, but then I cut it. But it's definitely something that I would consider putting it back in. So, you know, there's another card right there that could fit in this deck quite well. But yeah, I'd be happy to hear what you think. But anyway, if you're still watching, thanks for watching. It'd be cool if you can like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. And otherwise, I'll talk to you later.